Because of her bad smell, no one came near her until one man gave her a shower and took her home.
Jalen Meyer didn't belong in places like this. He was a logistics auditor, a civilian, mid-30s, quiet, didn't wear armor, didn't carry a weapon. He worked for the Environmental Oversight Bureau, the kind of office no one respected but everyone relied on. His job wasn't to fight, arrest, or save. It was to document, confirm oxygen levels, file saturation reports, walk forgotten blocks, and update data tags on long-dead infrastructure so the central colony system wouldn't flag it as uncertain. He kept his head down, did his job, and went home. That was the arrangement. Block D7 was one of Zero and Terra's earliest residential sectors, back when the colony had investors, sanitation units, and functioning weather regulation. Now, it was half abandoned, with broken range shielding and exposed ducts that pumped wet exhaust straight into the walkways. Rain slapped against the grid metal overpass as Jalen scanned a corroded utility box. His data tablet flickered, connection unstable. He tried again. O2, 72%. Moisture, critical. Airflow, slow. Ducting pressure, fluctuating. All expected. Nothing worth escalation. He logged it, exhaled, and kept moving. The streets here were too quiet. No children, no merchants, just the hum of power conduits and the constant hiss of warm rain hitting cold metal. The stench of mildew, rust, and failed insulation pressed against his nose. He didn't look around much. He already knew what he'd see. More cracks, more rotting signage, more empty food carts. But then he stopped. There was movement near a vent shaft. Not fast, not threatening, just present. She sat wedged in the corner between two overflow bins, knees tucked tight to her chest, head down, body motionless. Her clothing, if it still counted, was a filthy, torn thermal poncho barely hanging onto one shoulder. Her hair was long, white, but heavy with grease and grit. Her legs were bare, no shoes, her feet pressed flat against the wet pavement. She didn't flinch when he passed, but the smell did something to him. It was immediate, dense, not just unwashed, but chemical, like spoiled pheromones clinging to the skin. He almost gagged. That's when he realized who she was. People called her the smell girl. Others just turned away. Jalen had heard the rumors that she was half Allen, abandoned after an industrial incident ruined her biochemistry, that she couldn't get a job, couldn't live indoors, couldn't even beg because no one could stand close enough. He had walked past her once before. Everyone had, but this time something held him in place. He stood still in the rain, watching her. She didn't move, didn't look up. She wasn't shivering. She was too still for that. She wasn't waiting for help. She was waiting to be left alone. Jalen clenched his jaw. He wasn't trained for this. His job was to verify ductwork integrity and report mold levels. But the thought of walking away, again, sat wrong. He stepped closer, carefully. His boots clicked against the grate. She looked up. Her face was sharp beneath the grime. Thin lips, high cheekbones, pale violet skin under a layer of filth. Silver marbling along her jawline, visible even through the dirt. But it was her eyes that held him, wide, watchful, flat, like she was bracing for the insult before it landed. His throat tightened. "I can offer you a place to wash," he said. His voice came out quieter than he expected. Nothing else. Just that. No answer. He waited. She stared at him. No expression, just quiet calculation. Then, slowly she stood. She didn't thank him, didn't speak, just followed as he turned and walked. They climbed the stairs to his flat in silence. Rain bled through the stairwell's broken sealant. His fingers trembled slightly as he keyed in the access code. He hadn't brought anyone here since he arrived on Zero and Terra 2 years ago. The door hissed open. The inside was functional, barely. A cot, a heater unit, small stove, data console, one chair. The air smelled like metal and clean soap. He pointed to the fresher unit down the hall. "You can use the water. There's a towel on the rail." She stepped inside without speaking. The door closed behind her. He sat at the edge of the cot, hands pressed to his knees. His chest was tight. This was a bad idea. He didn't know her. Didn't know if she was unstable or dangerous or sick. But he'd seen how she looked at him. Not with hope. Not with gratitude, just disbelief. The water ran for 15 straight minutes. When the fresher door opened, he stood. She emerged barefoot, dripping. She wore only the oversized gray shirt he had left folded on the counter. It hung loosely on her slender frame, brushing her thighs. Her skin was clean now, pale violet, soft-looking, streaked with silver veins that caught the light. Her hair fell over her collarbone, still damp. She held the towel close to her body, fingers curled tight in the fabric. She didn't look around the room. Her eyes stayed on the floor. Jalen cleared his throat and turned toward the shelf. He retrieved a sealed food pack, snapped the rehydration tab, and placed it on the counter. "It's hot," he said. Still no words. But she walked over, took the tray, sat on the floor near the heater. Not because he told her, but because it was the warmest place in the room. She ate slowly, methodically, not like someone starved, like someone who wasn't used to being allowed to sit still. He watched from a distance, didn't speak. Eventually, she pulled the blanket from the cot and curled up beside the wall. Not under it, just near it, as if preparing to be told to leave. Hours passed. He worked in silence, reviewing a corrosion report on the tablet, not really reading it. His mind kept circling back to her. Her scent was gone now, washed away. She was clean, and still here. That night, as the rain slowed and the heater hummed quietly, her voice finally broke the silence. Soft, careful. "Do I still smell bad?" He looked over. Her eyes were half closed, staring at the ceiling. He answered without hesitation. "No, you smell like steam and salt." She exhaled. Not relief, not joy, just breath. And for the first time, she closed her eyes. Not pretending, just resting. Jalen sat in the chair, back straight, tablet forgotten on his lap. He didn't know what she wanted, what she needed, but tonight she was dry, federal warm, and that, for now, felt like enough. The morning light on Zero and Terra didn't brighten anything. It just shifted the color of the rain from silver to pale blue. The air was still thick with moisture, and the building's worn insulation let in the constant echo of water hitting steel. Jalen Meyer sat at the edge of his cot, rubbing the back of his neck with one hand as his tablet loaded. His environmental survey logs were already overdue, but his eyes weren't on the screen. They were on her. Arinya was still asleep, or pretending to be, curled on the floor near the wall heater, wrapped in the blanket she had taken the night before. She hadn't tried to take the bed, hadn't moved during the night, at least not loudly. Her breathing was steady, shallow, controlled. He hadn't asked her name, didn't know if she'd offer it. But now, watching her face in the early haze, cleaner, though not unscarred, he realized how wrong the rumors had been. She wasn't unwell. She wasn't feral. She was alert, careful. Jalen tapped the tablet once. Diagnostics loaded. O2 levels in the adjacent sector were climbing too quickly. Could be duct corrosion again. He'd need to inspect the northern vent lines before noon. He didn't want to leave her here alone, but he couldn't skip work. Even if no one read his reports, absences were flagged. He stood, moving quietly to prepare another meal packet. As the heating plate hummed, he glanced toward the floor. She was awake, not moving, not speaking, but her eyes were open now, watching him, calm, quiet. He crouched a little, kept his tone even. "There's food," he said, placing the tray on the edge of the low table. "Not good, but hot." Her fingers slowly appeared from under the blanket, reaching for the tray. No eye contact, still avoiding any sudden movement. He waited, unsure what else to offer. Finally, he spoke again. "My name's Jalen," he said. "Jalen Meyer. I work with the Environmental Oversight Bureau. I log corrosion, moisture, oxygen loss, stuff no one cares about unless the ceiling collapses." He didn't expect her to answer, but something in her expression shifted, slightly, like she'd filed that information away. She took a slow bite, then another. Eventually, she spoke. "Arinya." One word. Soft. Clear. He nodded once, not pressing. She didn't explain further, but the weight behind her name made him pause. There was a person there, not just a body collapsed by a vent shaft. A past. A life. "I'll be gone for 2 hours," he said. "Need to finish a field scan? I'll lock the door when I go. Unless you want to leave." Her eyes flicked up, That was new. Not fear, just alertness. I'll stay, she said simply. That was it. No gratitude, no apology, no small talk. Jalen left quietly. The walk to the northern duct lines was uneventful. The streets were mostly empty, only a few vendors setting up filtered water tanks under sagging canopies. No one greeted him. No one noticed. Zero and Terra had too many ghosts to care about the living. As he logged data and scanned rusted panels, his thoughts drifted back to the flat. He wondered what Arena was doing. If she was sleeping again. If she'd taken anything and left. He didn't think she would. She hadn't asked for food, or shelter, or clothes. When he'd offered the shower, she hadn't begged. She had simply chosen to follow. And when she cleaned herself, he paused. There was something about that moment. Not vulnerability, not trust, permission. She had given herself permission to be clean again. He hadn't rescued her. He'd just given her access. By the time he returned, the flat was quiet. But it wasn't empty. Aurenia was sitting at the small table, still in the oversized shirt, now with the sleeves rolled up to her elbows. The place was noticeably cleaner, food trays organized, wet rags drying by the sink. The filter panel had been wiped down. She looked up as he entered, didn't speak. He locked the door, then leaned against it for a second longer than he needed to. You didn't have to do that, he said. I know, she answered. A pause. You're not from here, she added. No, he said. I was posted here last cycle. Volunteered. What? He hesitated. Most people didn't ask. I like things quiet. This place doesn't expect much from you. That suits me. She nodded once, like that made sense. He stepped toward the heater. It was blowing warm, filtered air across the floor. She stayed where she was, watching him. Then quietly, they said I'd never smell clean again. Her voice wasn't bitter, just tired. Jalen didn't know how to respond. Pheromone imbalance? He guessed. She gave a slight nod. I worked with glacial cores. One of the extraction tanks ruptured. Spill exposure. Damaged my skin chemistry. They put me on a leave schedule. But no one wanted to sit next to me. No one wanted me back. She didn't cry. Didn't look for sympathy. He listened. I was assigned a reassessment. Then the stipend stopped. Then housing. I was still in recovery. They said, not eligible for permanent placement. She looked around the room. This is the first time I've slept indoors in. I don't know. Jalen swallowed. I didn't do anything special, he said. She looked at him for the first time. Really looked. You didn't walk away, she said. Everyone else did. The room was silent again. But it wasn't cold. That night, she didn't sleep on the floor. He handed her the cot blanket again, but she sat down on the edge of the bed instead. Didn't say a word. He lay on the floor this time. Neither spoke. But in the middle of the night, as the rain returned and the vent hissed quietly, he felt the blanket slide over him from above. Folded, placed gently. He didn't move, and neither of them was alone anymore. The next morning, Jalen didn't pretend to be asleep. He lay still on the floor, one arm tucked behind his head, eyes half open, watching the soft light through the cracked ceiling panel shift from bluish gray to dull white. The air was cool but dry for once. The heater hummed beside him. The blanket she'd placed over him during the night was still there, neatly tucked, still warm. He heard quiet movement, fabric against fabric, a soft footstep, then the faint clink of a cup on the counter. Aurenia was awake. She stood by the stove, wrapped in that same oversized shirt, sleeves rolled now into tight cuffs just above the elbow. Her long silver-white hair was pulled back loosely, damp at the ends from the cloth she'd used to dry it. She was holding the water flask upside down, frowning as the last drops slid into the heating cup. There wasn't much left. Without turning, she asked, "Do you always sleep on the floor?" Jalen blinked. "No," he said, sitting up. "Just didn't think you'd want to switch places again." She turned slightly, not all the way, just enough to let her voice carry naturally. "It's your bed, and it was your blanket last night." She didn't smile, but her shoulders shifted, a tiny, visible exhale. Not quite tension, not quite relief. Jalen stood, adjusted his shirt, and stepped past her to the small cabinet above the heater. Pulled out the last food pack. They were down to one. He placed it beside the water cup. She didn't reach for it. He didn't eat either. There were still unspoken rules between them. Finally, she asked, "How long do you plan to let me stay?" Jalen didn't respond immediately. He leaned back against the far wall, hands resting on his thighs, eyes meeting hers without force. "As long as you need," he said. "I'm not in a hurry." She processed that. No reaction on her face, but something behind her eyes shifted. He added, "If you want to stay, stay. If you want to leave, I'll walk you to wherever you want to go. I'm not here to keep you." That mattered. More than he expected. Arinya finally reached for the cup, took a sip, then held it in both hands as she sat. Her body curled slightly around the warmth, her knees tucked against the edge of the table. "You're not curious why I really smell the way I do? I assumed it wasn't something you wanted to talk about. Most people make up stories when I don't tell them," she said. "They think it was my fault, that I ignored the warnings, didn't follow containment protocol, that I was doing something dirty." Her jaw tightened. "I did everything right. The rupture was system side. We've been reporting back pressure for weeks. The technician who flagged it didn't even have clearance to touch the panel. I told them it would rupture. They ignored me. When it happened, I was caught in the spray." She paused. "The chemicals altered my skin's pheromone release. I became off. Not dangerous, just wrong. The scent made people uneasy. Animals avoided me. The administration pulled me off shift for psychosocial hazard review." She looked down at the cup. "They told me to wait while they processed a reassignment. I waited 3 weeks. My apartment lockout notice came before the reassignment did." Jalen stayed quiet. "I tried sleeping near the water vents, near processing bays. I thought the smell would wear off. I scrubbed until my skin bled, took steam hits until I collapsed. Nothing worked. And then eventually, I stopped trying." Jalen's voice was low. "No one helped. No one wanted to be near me." He felt the sting of that. Not pity, just the sharp clarity of how easily a life could slide out of recognition. "Until now," she added. Jalen met her gaze. "You were still you under it all. That didn't change." Arinya looked at him for a long moment, not with disbelief, with quiet study, as if trying to decide if what he'd said was naive or real. She set the cup down. "I'd like to shower again today." "You can use whatever you need," he said. There was a pause. Then, quietly, "Will it wear off again?" He understood what she meant. "The smell?" She nodded. "I don't know," he said honestly. "But you're clean now. I don't smell anything bad. Just steam. Soap." Her throat moved, not from words, but from swallowing something she couldn't voice. She stood slowly, gathered the towel, and walked toward the fresher. As the door closed behind her, Jalen sat back down and exhaled. This wasn't what he was used to. He dealt with humidity charts, rust tables, gas leaks. Not trauma. Not people quietly rebuilding their sense of self. But something in him, something deeper than rules or roles, told him he'd made the right decision. Later, after the water stopped, she stepped out again. Hair freshly damp, skin glowing with warmth. She looked better, straighter, still guarded, but something had shifted. She folded the towel herself, sat down at the table again. And this time, she asked, "Do you have any work today?" "Yes. Southern sector. Flooded insulation tags. About a half-hour walk. Do you want company?" He looked at her. She didn't mean it casually. She meant it carefully, as if she was offering something more than presence, a step toward being useful again. "I'd like that," he said. She didn't smile, but her hands relaxed on the table. It was a beginning, not a rescue, not a romance, just two people stepping into the same silence, together. And for Arinya, that was more than anyone had offered in a long time. The rain didn't let up. Jalen stepped into it first, hood up, tablet tucked under his jacket. He paused just beyond the stairwell exit, glancing back. Arinya stood behind him in silence. She wore one of his outer jackets now. Regulation issue, faded navy, a size too large. The collar swallowed half her jawline. Her pale violet skin peeked out at the wrists. Beneath it, she still wore the long shirt, cinched with an old gear belt she had found in the storage bin. Her hair was damp, but brushed now, tied loosely behind her head with a rubber strap. She looked clean, present, but not invisible. She hesitated at the doorway. The rain light struck her face. Jalen didn't rush her. "I can go alone," he said. "You don't owe me company." Arinya's voice was low. I don't want to be alone. She stepped out. They walked side by side, not touching, not speaking at first, just moving through the crumbling lanes of Zeruan Terrace's southern sector, a dead stretch of broken rooftops, rusted ducts, and thick mist that clung to the walls like moss. Jalen focused on the job. His tablet chirped every 10 meters, logging moisture indexes, pressure fluctuations, and signal loss from exposed junctions. He moved efficiently, crouching to scan power nodes or rerouting reports through backup channels. Arena watched, observed. At first, her eyes stayed on the ground, instinctively. But when she realized no one was looking at her, no one was yelling, no one was covering their faces, her posture shifted. She stood straighter, looked around. They passed a pair of dockhands carrying sealed crates toward a freight lift. One looked at Jalen, then glanced at her. His nose twitched, and then nothing. No whisper, no comment. He moved on. Arena kept walking, but her jaw clenched. Her shoulders tensed. Jalen noticed. "You okay?" he asked. "Not used to being seen without being insulted," she answered. "Maybe you're not the one who should be ashamed," he said quietly. She looked at him. No smile, just recognition. They stopped under an overhang near a collapsed data tower. Jalen needed to access the moisture grid built into the base. Most of the junction was buried behind warped plating. As he knelt, Arena stepped forward without being asked. "Which relay are you looking for?" she asked. He glanced up, surprised. Blue casing, fiber wrap near the base. She crouched beside him, scanning with her eyes, then pointed. "There, that's the patchwork knot. They used to color code the bad insulation. You work with moisture systems before?" "I worked glacial harvest." "Right," Jalen said. "Of course." She didn't explain further, but she stayed there beside him, watching him work, offering short notes, correcting his guesses with quiet precision. She wasn't helping for his benefit. She was re-entering her world, one function, one skill, one decision at a time. After 2 hours, the work was done. Jalen backed away from the grid, arms soaked, gloves slick. "That's the last tag." Arena leaned against the wall beside him, face damp, hair clinging slightly to her temples. They stood in silence again. Not awkward, just still. Then she said, "That man, the dock worker, I saw him wrinkle his nose." Jalen shook his head. "Habit. I've seen him do that in clean rooms. You don't smell." She didn't believe him fully, but she didn't argue. "I don't know if it'll stay this way," she admitted. The scent used to come back. After a few days. After sleep. Heat. Stress. "We'll see," Jalen said. "One day at a time." Arena looked at him again. A longer look, not just acknowledgement. "You speak like someone who's lived alone too long," she said. "I have." He didn't say more. They returned to the flat just before dusk. The hallway was damp again, condensation forming along the edges of the ceiling. Jalen keyed the door. Arena stepped in first this time. She didn't wait to be invited. Inside, she moved with quiet familiarity, hanging up the jacket, wiping her boots, untying her hair. Jalen watched her from across the room. He realized something then. She had decided to stay. She hadn't said it aloud, but the way she moved, the way she reached for a clean cup without asking, the way she rested one hand on the heater without looking, it was clear. This place had become more than shelter. It was becoming hers, too. And for the first time since she'd stepped out of the rain, Jalen saw not just a stranger healing, but a person returning to herself. And she was doing it here, with him, in silence, without fanfare, just one clean breath at a time. That night, the silence between them didn't feel hollow. Jalen sat at the table, scanning a backlog of corrosion reports on his tablet. He wasn't really reading them. He kept glancing toward the corner of the room, where Arena sat cross-legged on a folded blanket, brushing her hair with slow, careful strokes. She hadn't asked for a comb. She'd found one in the supply bin, rinsed it clean, and now worked methodically from root to end. Her expression was neutral, focused. Jalen caught himself watching too long. He turned back to the screen. A minute passed, maybe more. "You keep looking at me," she said. He looked up again. "Honest." "Yeah," he replied. Arena didn't seem offended. "Why?" "You're here," he said, "and not how I expected." She paused the brush. "How did you expect me to be?" He exhaled through his nose, setting the tablet down. I didn't. That's the truth. When I saw you out there, I assumed you wouldn't speak. Or maybe leave without a word. But now you're in my space, using my heater, cleaning my cup, and I don't want you to leave. Arinia looked at him. No walls. Just quiet absorption. Most people want something, she said. Eventually. I don't, Jalen said. I'm not waiting for you to owe me. Her fingers clenched slightly on the brush. She set it down. But you still watch me, she said. Like I'll break. I don't think you'll break, Jalen said. I think you already did. And I think you rebuilt yourself without asking anyone for permission. That stopped her. Arenia's eyes softened just enough to shift the space between them. Then she stood, slowly, walked to the counter. May I make tea? She asked. You can use whatever I have, Jalen said. She nodded, opened the cabinet, found the last sachet, a rough mix of dried roots and synthetic herbs. She boiled water, poured it evenly between 2 cracked ceramic cups, and carried one over to the table. She didn't hand it to him. She placed it near his hand, deliberate, quiet, then sat down across from him. They drank in silence. Later, she stood again, this time barefoot, and walked to the heater. Not to warm herself, but to lay the blanket out properly on the floor. She looked at the cot, then at him. You take the bed tonight. I'm fine on the floor. You said you don't want me to feel like I owe you, she said. So don't keep giving things like I do. Jalen didn't argue. He stood, moved to the cot, and sat slowly. Orenia curled onto the blanket beside the heater. It glowed faint orange, casting soft lines across the floor. Neither spoke. Minutes passed. Then, quietly, her voice. Do I still smell like soap? Jalen turned his head, resting against the wall. You smell like you. What does that mean? It means I stopped noticing. In a good way. She let out a sound. Not laughter, but a breath close to it. He didn't move, but something had shifted between them. Not physical. Not yet. Just the fact that he hadn't crossed the distance. And that she'd noticed. The next morning, she stood closer to him as he prepped their breakfast. Their hands touched once, lightly, when she reached for the cup he was about to hand her. Neither pulled back. And when he left to scan a new section of the western tunnels, she said, I'll clean the flat while you're gone. He stopped. Look back. You don't have to. I know. He left without another word. When he returned 3 hours later, the floor was swept. The sink was clean. The towels were drying on the rack. And Orenia, she was asleep, on the cot. One hand rested on the pillow where his head had been the night before. He didn't say anything, didn't wake her. He sat down near the heater, drank what was left of the cold tea, and watched her chest rise and fall. She didn't smell like soap anymore. She smelled like home. Jalen didn't know how long he sat there. Orenia didn't stir. She remained curled on the cot, one arm tucked under the blanket, her head pressed gently against the edge of the pillow. Her breathing stayed steady, and her body, for the first time, looked unguarded. He didn't wake her. He just watched. The heater hummed behind him. Rain ticked against the exterior vents. His tablet buzzed twice. A delayed alert from Central Dispatch requesting a standard moisture reevaluation for Sector 9. He ignored it. When Orenia finally opened her eyes, there was no sudden tension. She didn't jolt awake, didn't flinch. She blinked slowly, looked toward the opposite wall, then turned her head slightly and saw him. Still seated by the heater, knees drawn up, arms resting across them. Their eyes met. She didn't sit up. You didn't leave, she said quietly. No, he replied. Didn't want to. There was a silence between them, not strained, not expectant. Then she asked, have you ever lived with anyone before? Jalen nodded slowly. A long time ago, before the reassignment program. She was posted off-world. I stayed behind. We lost contact during the collapse of Tier 4. I didn't try to reconnect. Why not? He looked at her. Not defensive, just direct. Because she didn't ask me to. Orenia watched his face. Her fingers curled into the blanket. I used to live with 3 others, she said. Shared quarters. Tight space. We argued about heater use, about how many minutes you could hog the shower, about who left the tea line open. I thought I hated them. She paused. But after the incident, no one came to check on me. Not once. I wasn't angry, just surprised. Jalen swallowed. Maybe people don't know how to show up for someone who smells wrong, she added. That's not what I saw, he said. What did you see? You weren't asking for help, Jalen said. You were trying to vanish. Like if you sat still enough, the world would stop noticing you existed. Arinya sat up slowly, blanket falling to her waist. But you noticed. He nodded. You didn't look dirty, he said. You looked like someone who used to be proud, who didn't know where to put that pride anymore. That quieted the room. She sat there, staring down at her lap, lips pressed together. Then she stood. She crossed the room in 3 careful steps and stopped in front of him. He didn't move. Her voice dropped lower. If I sat beside you, she asked, would you pull away? No. She sank to her knees, not against him, beside him, close enough that her arm brushed his. The heater hummed. The rain thickened behind the window. She didn't lean in, didn't touch his face, but her shoulder pressed lightly into his. Her thigh settled against his knee. Her breath slowed beside him, shallow at first, then deeper. She whispered, I haven't touched anyone in over a year, not even by accident. Jalen answered without turning. I won't move unless you ask. She closed her eyes. Don't move, she said. They stayed like that. Minutes passed, maybe longer. The room grew warmer. At one point, her head gently touched his shoulder. He didn't lean in, didn't turn it into something else. She chose the distance. She closed it, and she stayed. Later that night, she didn't sleep on the floor. She didn't ask to share the cot. She just took the blanket, climbed in, and left space. When Jalen returned from brushing his teeth, he found her already lying there, eyes open, arms folded under the blanket, silent. He stood by the cot. I'll stay on the floor, he said. You can lie beside me, she replied, but no closer than this. She gestured with her hand, a hand width of space between them. He nodded. He lay beside her, fully clothed. No contact, just presence. And for the first time, the silence in the room wasn't about fear or shame or waiting. It was agreement. It was control, shared, and it was enough. For now. The following days passed differently. There was rhythm now, quiet, shared rhythm. In the mornings, Jalen logged reports. Arinya organized the flat, cleaned, learned the systems he used. She asked questions. Not many, but each one was precise, intentional. She didn't fill the space with conversation. She filled it with action. The heater worked more efficiently now. The leaks near the bathroom vent had been patched using strips of reinforced foil she salvaged from a maintenance hatch. She took his loose socks and stitched them at night. She never said she was staying, but she'd stopped sitting near the door. That was all the answer he needed. That evening, after another long walk through the outer ducts, they returned soaked and wind-bitten. The rainfall had shifted from steady mist to sharp slanted sheets, and by the time they reached the flat, Arinya's jacket was clinging to her back. Jalen peeled his own off first, hung it near the vent. Arinya followed, hair dripping, eyes narrowed against the wet. She pushed her sleeves up and began undoing the belt around her waist, then paused. Jalen had already turned to grab a towel. He handed it to her without a word. She took it, dried her face first, then her neck. He stepped back to give her space. Do you want the fresher first? He asked. She shook her head. You go. I'll clean up out here. He hesitated, not from doubt, but because something in the room felt different, denser. She stood straighter now, moved slower. Her eyes lingered longer on his. When he returned, towel around his shoulders, shirt freshly changed, she was seated on the edge of the cot, her long hair braided loosely, the lights dimmed. She looked up. Her voice was soft. Would it bother you if I got in beside you? No, he said, closer than before. His answer didn't come right away, but not because he doubted it. He wanted to be sure she did. Only if you want that, he said. I do. She stood and unfastened her belt. The shirt hung loose again, the same slate gray one he'd given her days ago. It fell to mid-thigh. Her legs were bare, feet clean, skin still faintly damp from wiping down. She moved without drama, without seduction, just decision. He got into bed first, pulled the blanket aside. She followed. When she lay down beside him, their arms touched, then their hips. Her head rested near his chest. Neither of them moved fast. She placed one hand lightly on his ribs. Her fingertips rested over his shirt, not pressing, just resting. Jalen exhaled. He reached up, slowly, and brushed a strand of damp hair from her forehead. Her eyes fluttered, half closed. She whispered, "Do I feel normal?" He didn't lie. "No, you feel warm, and careful, and real." She swallowed hard. He heard it in her throat. "I used to be afraid of being touched." After. "You're not now." "I am," she said, "but less when it's you." He didn't kiss her. Not yet. He just shifted his hand from her hair to the back of her neck. Held it there. She moved closer, pressed her body to his. Her breath was shallow, but steady. And then, slowly, she touched her forehead to his. He closed his eyes. She didn't say, "I trust you." She didn't have to. Her breathing, her nearness, the space she had once guarded so fiercely, now filled with her body. Her warmth, her choice, said it all. And when her fingers slid beneath his shirt, tracing gently over his ribs, not searching, just learning, he didn't flinch. He let her explore, let her rediscover, let her be the one who chose how far, how close, how much. The night passed slowly. There was no urgency, no shame, just the sound of rain against steel, the warmth of shared skin beneath old sheets, and the long, long silence of two people who had nothing to prove, only each other to hold. By morning, they hadn't moved, and they didn't need to. The storm passed by dawn. Zero and Terra looked different under dry skies. No brighter, no cleaner, but quieter. The endless drip of runoff had slowed to silence. The streets shimmered with scattered puddles and cold morning mist. Inside the flat, the silence was warm. Aurenia lay still, her cheek against Jalen's chest, one arm tucked beneath his ribs. She hadn't moved all night. Neither had he. There had been no need. She opened her eyes before he did. Watched the ceiling, the cracked panel near the heater vent, the shape of the metal shelf casting long shadows. She counted the seconds of stillness, not with fear, but with awe. Her skin didn't feel tight. Her breath didn't catch. She didn't expect to be rejected when he woke up. For the first time in months, maybe longer, she didn't feel like she had to leave. When he stirred, she didn't pull away. His voice was low, groggy. "You're still here." She nodded. He reached for her hand under the blanket. Found it. Held it. No questions. No negotiations. Just that. Later that morning, they cleaned together. She folded the spare clothes. He scrubbed the stovetop. She rerouted the heater vent using scrap tape and an old panel grid. He organized his work reports. It felt natural. They didn't speak about what happened the night before, because there was nothing to explain. The distance between them was gone. Only one thing remained, the world outside. Aurenia stood near the door as Jalen laced his boots. He was due to report to Outer Maintenance Block 6, his final required field check for the month. She watched him. "You want me to stay here?" she asked. He looked up. "No," he said. "I want you to come with me, if you want to." She hesitated, not because she doubted him, but because she realized something. "I'm not afraid of people seeing me anymore," she said. "But I think I'm still afraid of being seen with you. Because of what they'll think." "No," she said, "because I might start caring what they think." He stood, crossed the room, took her hand. "Let's find out," he said. They walked through the building in silence. The stairwell was damp but empty. The main corridor near the water exchange center was full. Techs, admin clerks, delivery carriers. As they stepped into view, a few heads turned. A few eyes lingered. No one said a word. Jalen didn't flinch. Aurenia didn't look away. And after 30 seconds, the attention passed. The world, as always, moved on. But they didn't. They kept walking, step by step, side by side. Not as two strangers coexisting, but as a man and a woman who had chosen this. Without rescue, without romance tropes, without promises they couldn't keep. They didn't need a new world. They made a small one. Together. At the edge of the main maintenance sector, Jalen reached for his scanner. Aurenia reached beside him, took the secondary panel tool. Their hands brushed. He smiled. She didn't smile back, but her hand stayed in his. And when the wind rose, catching her hair, brushing it across her cheek, she didn't hide. She just turned toward him. "I like to make something here," she said. "Not just survive it." Jalen nodded. "Then let's build it." And they did. The rain hadn't returned in days. Zero and Terra still smelled like wet steel and dust, but something in the air had shifted, softer winds, clearer mornings. The colony's systems had stabilized enough that Jalen no longer received emergency alerts every other night. And inside Block D7, Unit 9C, things had changed in smaller, quieter ways. The heater vent had been fully resealed. The cot had been replaced, not by a new bed, but by a thick sleeping platform they constructed together from scavenged thermal panels, covered in layered foam and clean linen. 2 cups always sat out on the table now. One for each of them. She stayed, not because she had nowhere else to go, but because this was hers now, too. Aurenia stood by the window that morning, sunlight breaking faintly through the misted pane. She wore a soft gray shirt tucked loosely around her frame, hem reaching mid-thigh, sleeves rolled. Her hair, dry and clean, was down, brushing her back. Her skin looked different in the daylight, brighter, calm. Jalen sat on the floor near the heater, legs stretched, sipping tea, just watching her. She looked over her shoulder. "What?" she asked. He shrugged. "Just still not used to seeing you stand still. I used to think stillness was failure," she said. Now it feels like something I earned." She crossed the room, sat beside him. He set his cup down. For a long moment, they just sat. No words. Their legs touched, then her shoulder, then her hip. He didn't move. She did. She turned her head, kissed his jaw. Soft, precise, no hesitation. "I want to be touched tonight," she said. Jalen didn't react too quickly. He met her eyes, held them. "All the way?" he asked. She nodded once. "But not like I'm still broken," she added. "You're not." Her hand rested on his chest. She pushed gently. He let her guide him, slow, deliberate, back toward the sleeping platform. They moved together, quiet, unrushed. He removed his shirt first, then sat on the edge of the bed, waiting. She stood in front of him, lifted the hem of hers, slowly, and pulled it off over her head. Nothing else beneath. Jalen's breath caught, not from lust, from awe. He had seen her body in glimpses, beneath blankets, in damp light, but never like this. Never unveiled by her own hand, with nothing hidden and no shame. Her figure was slender, firm, soft at the hips and thighs, silver marbling catching the pale light across her abdomen and chest. Scars still marked her arms, faded chemical burns, lines of healing that traced her history, but none of them made her retreat. He stood, touched her shoulder. Her skin was warm. "I'll follow you," he said. She lay back. He joined her. Their mouths met slowly, not with hunger, but with patience. He kissed her cheek, her neck, her collarbone. He traced his hands down her sides. She inhaled sharply when his palms passed over her hips, but she didn't stop him. She pressed in his chest, pulled at his clothes, slid them off one layer at a time. Her hands moved across his back, his ribs, his jaw. Every touch asked a question. Every breath answered. They didn't rush. They explored. They held. She whispered his name. Once, just before her body arched into his, before she pulled him fully to her. He asked again, just with his eyes. She nodded, pulled him closer, and he entered her, carefully, slowly, both of them breathing in the moment like it was fragile and real and only theirs. No need for rhythm at first. Just contact. Just wait. Just warmth. Then movement. Mutual. Matched. Her hands on his shoulders. His lips at her neck. No performance. No script. Just raw human need reshaped by care, by time, by the rare kind of safety earned in silence. She moaned once. Low. Into his neck. He shivered. Not from pleasure. From gratitude. When it ended, they didn't separate. Her body remained tangled with his. One leg over his. Her fingers spread across his chest. And when she finally whispered, "I feel like I exist again," he didn't say anything. He just kissed her forehead, held her closer, and let the silence say the rest. And